Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Today I'm going to be speaking to Natasha Asherah. Now, Natasha comes out of the UK. She's a breast cancer thriver and has been living with the illness since 2013. Now, on her diagnosis, she spontaneously made a powerful decision, like many of us, that whatever happens, she's going to see it as a gift, even though she didn't know how. So she repeatedly found the decision to be powerful, yielding for more ongoing gifts, the biggest of which is coming home to her true self, vibrant, alive self, soul self, embodying and living that is constantly revealing itself each moment. I love that about that because that's how I believe in. I live with that. So, welcome, Natasha. Welcome on my podcast.
Thanks so much, Grace. It's lovely to be here, and it's lovely to finally meet you as well.
Thank you. Likewise. Now, the thing is, Natasha, I normally say I was diagnosed in 2018. I'm now cancer free, but you actually say that you're living with the illness. So,
Yeah.
can you explain in 2013, how did this all start? So, take our listeners and our viewers on a journey. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found a lump in my breast and went to the doctor to have it checked out. And she actually said to me, "I'm not worried about that lump." She said, "But I am worried about this one." And she pointed to an area where I'd had a benign lump removed 4 years earlier. And really looking back, there was no need for that lump to be removed. But there had in that place a tumour was growing. I mean, I didn't know it at the time. I had to go to the hospital and have that diagnosed. So I went to the hospital. They biopsied it. They did a mammogram, and they found it was a small cancer. Luckily, it was grade 2. It wasn't very big. It was slow growing. So I felt like, okay, all of that's to my advantage. But, it's still a shock, right? Isn't it? I mean, you hear the words breast cancer and it's just like the whole world kind of goes upside down. And I didn't really take it in at first. I went home. I, sat there. I said to myself, okay, this is what's happening. This is going to be a gift. Whatever's going to happen, this is going to be a gift. This is the way I'm going to deal with it. And then from that point on, I started researching. I felt very strongly in myself that I didn't really want to go the medical route. I had been interested in health for quite a while and lots of alternative things. So that was kind of where I started looking, changed my diet, looked at my lifestyle, researched a huge amount of stuff on the internet. But it was within sort of 2 or 3 days, the fear really started to kick in. And for me, that was quite paralyzing. I know it's not that way for everybody, but it is that way for a lot of women, a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And I also felt that at the root of it, so for me, it was like, well, what caused this? What's the root of this illness? And that the medical system weren't able to tell me that, which I found completely bizarre. I just thought, well, how can you treat this thing when you don't know where it's coming from? Then all you're doing really is you're trying to deal with symptoms. But surely there must be a reason. Oh, no, there's no reason. We don't know, blah, blah, blah. And of course, they never ask you what your lifestyle is, what your levels of stress are, what your diet is like. All those kind of things, which I've come to know through the journey, are really, really important. Anyway, ultimately, after about 3 months of changing diet and things like that and implementing all sorts of things, going to see various practitioners and all of that kind of thing, I ultimately did decide to have a lumpectomy, to have the tumour removed, because I was in so much fear and I didn't know what to do, and it was growing, and it had started to grow much faster than it was originally, presumably, I think, because of the amount of fear that I was in.
Yeah.
So I had that done, and then I really tuned into, were the radiotherapy and the chemotherapy they were wanting to give me, was that actually right for me? And no matter how long I sat with it, how much I said to myself, don't just resist it for the sake of it because you don't want to do it, I really tuned in and could not get a yes. So finally I just accepted, okay, this isn't for me and I have to find another way. And I feel like I did everything under the sun. But ultimately, although I think everything that I did helped in some way, it didn't really solve it. It didn't heal what was going on. And then, I mean, long story short, really, back in 2018, I had some things going on. And I felt like, okay, I need to go back and get checked by the hospital, because I did go periodically to get checked. But I found that experience quite difficult. And actually, I'd been through a number of consultants. The first one called me crazy because I wouldn't do the chemotherapy. Another one I went to see seemed to get quite angry with me that I didn't want to do that. I didn't find that very helpful, as you can imagine. So I went to see somebody else who a friend of mine was going to see, who was monitoring her through regular MRIs. And that was something I was willing to be monitored through. I didn't want to have mammograms. I don't believe that they're safe. And she wouldn't monitor me that way. She actually told me, oh no, we don't do that, which I knew was a lie. And I don't know why I didn't confront her with it, but I think, you know, the whole experience of going to hospital at that stage was quite difficult for me. And then she decided to pull out every fear tactic under the sun to try and persuade me to have treatment. You know, saying things like, well, if you don't do this treatment, then it could go to your liver and you could be dead in 6 months. Again, not very helpful. And actually, for me, that just had me running in the opposite direction. It didn't work. I made a decision, not for better or worse, not to go back to the hospital at that point, which was a shame, really, because I think, you know, it's a failing, I think, of our medical system that they can't, some of them, not all of them, won't integrate with lots of the complementary and alternative therapies out there. So really that had the opposite effect on me. It had me running away from the medical system, a decision not to go back, for better or worse. So after that, I just dealt with things the best I could. But at the beginning of lockdown, so when, you know, the whole COVID pandemic blew up, I had been having more symptoms going on. There was sort of pain in my breast, and I knew, you know, there was lumps there, and I knew there was stuff going on. So I went to a different hospital, went to a different consultant, and went with a different attitude as well. And had it confirmed that, yes, there was active cancer, and now it had also gone into my bones. So I look back on that and realized that actually my inability to deal with the fear that was running in the background of all of this had, to me, now it seems that had kept the disease alive. It was the reason why none of all the fantastic stuff that I had done had worked. You know, when you live in fear, then your body is in fight flight all the time. You're in stress all the time. Your body can't heal. So when I received the bone cancer diagnosis, my fear went through the roof. Like, it was a level of terror I don't think I had ever really felt before consciously. And I said to myself, okay, this is what I haven't dealt with. thank God, really, it's here, because I did know from, you know, my journey over the years and my personal development work that, you know, these things need to be dealt with and faced. But for some reason, I hadn't been able to. I now know that's because of trauma. And I know that trauma is at the root of the illness, as it can be for so many people. And here it was. I was smacked in the face with it and couldn't be ignored. I'd done enough work over the prior years around understanding trauma and knowing that if we can really truly be present with our emotional state as it arises in full acceptance, no resistance, then it can pass through and release. But I hadn't been able to do that with this level of fear because my trauma was so early and so repeated and so compounded that I didn't have in my nervous system the wiring and the ability to support myself through that level of intensity. So I knew I needed somebody who could really hold me to be able to, so that my system could learn to be with that fear and learn it was okay and release it. And luckily I found somebody.
Beautiful.
I did some work with her, and honestly, within 2 or 3 sessions, that terror went. And I had the experience of feeling this horrific terror in my body, like everything in me would scream to run away from it, not feel it, do everything not to feel it, anything but that. But she held me in it, and she held me so beautifully in it that it was able to process through my system and release. And I would, after that second and third session, I would come out of the session and I would feel such an opening of freedom and joy that I'd been longing for all my life. And I couldn't believe the irony, really, that it was there all along, but the way through it to it was through my fear. So it was a revelation to me, and it was very exciting because I realized the implications for me, not just in my life in terms of all sorts of other ways that fear was impacting my life and my relationships, but also with regards to the illness, because I really felt, you know, this fear had been in my system since since conception. I was adopted as a youngster, and my mother got pregnant under it very, very young. And the pregnancy was denied for 5 months. So, you know, what does a little fetus do in that situation? I don't exist. I better not be here, absorbing everything from the environment. So this was infused into me at a cellular level. So I worked with this lady for some time, for about 6 months. And then I really began to notice, although the fear cleared actually really quickly, I was quite surprised. We worked to clear the other things that would just come forward spontaneously. And what I noticed was that these patterns that came forward, they were identities. So they were personality patterns that were locked in place, you know, that held, just such gold of information. And they were put into place in a way, it's funny how identities are sort of constructed within our psyche, you know, with the beliefs, the thoughts, and then often the images that come with that in our head. But they're all rooted into the body through sensation. And often we label those sensations as emotion. So the work really was about revealing those constructs, presencing deeply with them with no resistance, just literally revealing them, and then allowing them to rest in full awareness. And then they would disappear.
Mm.
And over the time I worked with her, I realized that I developed this strength within my nervous system to be able to hold myself enough that I could do that on my own. And it started to really build confidence in myself.
Mm.
Just need a drink of water.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you for that, Val. Look, it's just everything you're saying, I not only do I agree, just so I can agree, I know where you're coming from, because that's exactly where I believe, from the get-go that you said, I'm thinking that's exactly what I did, so, and it's quite interesting how from the get-go you said, I asked the doctors, well, where does this come from? They're like, oh, like, I've heard a lot of things. I've heard because um, you don't lactate, you don't have children.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whereas my mum had 4 kids and I think she breastfed, and I'm like, mum had it. So, you know what I mean? It's all
Right.
these external things, oh, it's because of your age. It's because of, I don't know, who knows? You know what I mean? But I'm thinking it's not just that. So it's interesting how you say that, because I always say, you know, was I surprised I had breast cancer? Absolutely. We all are. But was I
Right.
surprised I had it? No,
No.
because I looked at my past
Yeah.
traumas, like you said. So when I hear of people with cancer, I do the same thing. I'm not analyzing, I'm not judging. What I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to go back a bit and go, there it is. That's, and people don't realize that. People talk about the now, the here and now. Oh, look, this is what's happened to me. And not realize that we're carrying, like you said, the traumas for so long, whether it was traumas for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, depending how old, when it happened, we all hold it. So yeah, I love the way you express that, because that is so true. So you worked with this lady for 6 months so you can get rid of all those fears. But did you also work through, I guess you also worked through the traumas that you were going through? Were they coming in all at once? Or because the reason I mean, I know, like you, where they come in and when they don't, but not many people realize, well, how do I know? How do I know that was a trauma and I'm not just creating it as a trauma? And I don't
Right.
mean that in a bad way, but you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like, they try and find a story. I mean, you and I, we can say it like it's the back of our hand, because we
Yeah.
know what happened. I was abused. I was physically beaten by my father, so it's I know that like the back of my hand. That's where my
Yeah.
trauma started from. So, and things like that. And my mother not being present, that's why, again, I believe the feminine energy of the breast, and also the uterus, women who get uterus cancer, your cervical cancer, things like that, it represents the feminine.
Yeah.
So I believe my mum had to do something like that. So you know what I'm saying? Like, so how do you go through that? How do you go through the traumas, so where you were able to identify them as traumas, like I said, and not something that we create?
Yeah, I see it as our triggers, really, our flags. And what I mean by triggers are the things that we react to emotionally. Or sometimes actually we're not aware that it's emotional. We get a trigger and all of a sudden our mind starts going off on one about
Mm.
someone or something. And there's usually an emotional taproot in the body that holds energetic information about that. I see it as really, you're not going to react that way if you're not holding a trauma. If you're
Mm.
not holding some energetic, it's like there's energy from your history frozen in time in your body and your field that your body is holding for you until the right time that you can release it. And so then we have these triggers.
Mm.
And if you weren't holding that energy, that trauma, you wouldn't get triggered by it. So actually our triggers, as distressing as they can be when we don't really understand what they are and we don't understand how to respond to them, they are absolute gold on your healing journey, honestly. And I'm now at the stage where a trigger comes along, which it doesn't these days that much. But when it does, it's like, great.
Yeah.
Something here that I can release. Something here that says to me, there's more freedom and joy available.
Yeah.
But you know, it wasn't always that way.
Of
And
course.
triggers would happen and I would go into a complete spin and a downward spiral. I could be in anxiety, depression, anger, you name it, for weeks, cycling around things.
Yeah. And I like the way you say that, it could be it's a gift, because I saw it as that as well. I didn't see it as I never said the words why me? Why not me? You know,
Yeah.
this, and I never said the words, this is happening to me. I would always say, this is happening for me. I need to learn from this because this is happening for me. So I saw it as a gift. Like you said, what the gift was, I don't know. If you told me 5, 6 years ago, you'd be doing podcasts and speaking to other women with breast cancer, I'd be like, oh, maybe I would have touched on it because my mum had it, but no, not really. We had a 7-figure business. We had 22 staff. We were in construction. Now, when we say, like, whether you believe in energy fields or believe in, like, the spirit, whoever you believe in tries to shift you because you're not sitting in your true authentic self.
Yeah.
Well, not only was that taken away 24 hours before I was diagnosed, but we lost everything. So we lose all our company. I get diagnosed, but my husband is now a life coach. Something he was coaching, he was life coaching our staff. Like, at one stage, I'm thinking, what are you, Dr. Phil to them, or are you a construction, business owner? And then, so if someone said to me 6 years ago, Grace, you would be doing this, I'd be like, no, I'm not. I'm not. I'm in construction. I'm an office chick. I go on site. Da, 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 da. So it is quite interesting how you say that it is a gift, but it obviously doesn't come, hi, you're being diagnosed. Oh, this is a gift. Like you said, I also went into you go into that bubble for quite a while, or a short term of time, but you go through it until you can sit back up, just shift in your seat and say, right, now I've got to look at it from a different angle. So did you feel that you started to look at things differently for yourself? Is that how it started? Or did you find that you did need, the help of this lady or other people to guide you through that?
I definitely needed help.
Mhm.
And that was something I recognized, not just in the last couple of years. I've always sought out help because I've always known I've had a challenging history. And I've always known at some level that I carry trauma, and I've always sought help with that. And also it's always been, psychology has been a fascination for me right from my teenage years. Like, what makes people tick? What makes me tick? Why are my parents like this?
Yeah.
Um, so I've always been interested in that, and reading about that. I ended up in my 20s in jobs that I didn't like or want, and always wanted, for one reason or another, I was sort of not encouraged, shall we say, to follow my heart and my passions and my interests and what I was good at. So I got very lost in my career, but eventually, I think when things really started to break down psychologically for me in my 20s and early 30s, I said to myself, okay, I really need to start paying attention to doing the things I want to do. And that's when I
Yeah.
started to train. I initially trained as a psychotherapist, and then went on to train in coaching modalities that were more about presence and embodiment, being present in the body. But always with a focus to helping other people and not really grasping, I knew I needed help, but I didn't realize how much.
Mm,
I didn't realize how much.
yeah.
So this cancer journey for me really has been an incredible gift in respect to that, in respect to understanding and seeing these layers within myself that have needed clearing. And to get that help from other people all through that journey has been invaluable, because we have blind spots about ourselves. That's
Mhm, mhm.
just kind of normal until you know how to uncover your blind spots. And
Yeah.
even then, it's just easier when somebody else can point them out to you and
Yeah.
support you in
Mm,
dealing with those.
yeah.
So yeah, I think getting help from other people is incredibly helpful, invaluable, but it has to be the right person and it has to be the right help. And I
Mhm.
think that's something I've become really good at over the years, is tuning into the next step, tuning into what's right for me and what's not. And initially on my journey, that wasn't always easy. And because of the blind spots, I didn't always get it right. But over time, it's become easier. And gradually, as I've released these identity structures and patterns that are at the root of the traumas and the illness, I can hear myself much more clearly. I have a knowing that comes from deep within my body about what's right and what's not,
Mm,
about who feels safe and who doesn't, about who's walking their talk and who isn't.
mm.
Yeah, I think that's been a big one for me, actually. Quite often we can buy into the words of what somebody is saying, but if we aren't deeply connected in our own selves,
Yep.
then we can't feel whether they are actually in alignment with what they're saying. Are they walking their
Mhm.
talk?
Mm.
And I think that's really important to feel. And that really only comes when you start to release those traumas out of your system. Because when those traumas go, then your true self really can come forward. Your
Mhm.
soul can embody, your spirit can embody and be here and live as you. That is what I really believe life is all about.
Yep.
And I also believe, we get sick when our soul is saying, I've had enough of living like this.
Wow.
You need to wake up here.
Yeah. I'm saying wow because I'm hearing me through you.
Oh,
I say the exact same thing. So it's not, I'm like, yes, there's someone else who thinks the same way as me. But it's not because we're trying to be different. What you hit the nail on the head so many times that if I had a little bell, it would have been constantly ringing, because it's so true. Because I always say to people, when you're not living your authentic self, that's when life says, you know what, you've been BSing me way too long. I can't deal with this. Your body shuts down. Everything shuts down because we suppress everything. Because, like you said, we're wearing masks. Constantly wearing masks. I'm wearing a mask for this person. I'm wearing a mask for that person. I need to be this for this. I need to be that for that. Not realizing. And then we're people pleasers. Oh, well, I was anyway. It's not that I'm not anymore, but I know how to say the word no a lot more than the word yes these days. But it's why, because it stems back. See, because in my case, it stems back to my childhood. Because if I did this for this person, in return, I'm going to get that connection. I don't get love, but I get that connection, which is like love. If I do this for this person, it's a connection. They're going to say, oh, wow, Grace, thank you so much. It's a connection. It's a transaction. So what was happening is I was doing all these transactions, but getting nothing in return. And then what happens is you sort of feel like, okay, I got to do more transactions so I could be seen. But when we say seen, not because we're trying to be in the limelight, because we want to be loved. It comes down to two things human beings are afraid of: love, or being what's the other one, or rejection. So it was, or something like that. I'm going to misquote my mentor, but my husband knows how to say it better. But you know what I mean? It's about that. You know, it comes down to, you know, not good enough. We're not good enough. We're not good enough. So we're going to keep going at it. And when we have traumas where if you dig deep, and you realize that you haven't had that connection of love. Like if you ask me, what was it like to be loved by your parents? I don't know. I've had both my parents for my whole life, like until my mother passed away when I was 40. Oh, geez, how old was I? That was 9 years ago. I can't even count. But anyway, 41, something like that. And my dad passed away when just now. He passed away 2 months ago at the age of 50. I'm 50. So, you know, and the thing is, if I said to you, my parents love me, they did. I'm not going to say they didn't, but I never felt love. I never felt it. So what I did my whole life is I tried to be the approval of others until I started, like you said, shedding all of that. And now I'm my authentic self. And a lot of people like, oh my God, Grace, you say what you want. And it's not being brutal. I always say to people, it doesn't mean me telling them to F off here and, you know, pee off there and things like that. That's not what I'm talking about, because that's your ego. You know, I talk about, you know, being authentic to yourself. If something doesn't sit right, look, you know what? I really appreciate you asking me out on this, you know, journey with you, or, you know, this movie, whatever it is. But you know what? I don't really feel comfortable doing it. And that's okay. You know, and I appreciate you. So when you say that to the other person, they know where they stand, but you're being true to you as well. So that's what I say about people. And the fact that you love psychology, I'm actually going back to studying human behavior as we speak. So, you know, I've even got my online, you know, my online school, you know, on my PC right in front of me. So I'm not doing any, you know, I am listening to you. But you know what I mean? But it's just like, because I was the same. I was, oh, how can I heal others? How can I, how not heal? How can I be there for others? And then I stop being there for myself.
Mhm.
And like you said, then something like this comes along and you go, oh, hell no. And then when I start saying to people, it's about me, it's not selfish, it's selfless, because the more you can give to yourself, the better you can give to others, you know? And I know it sounds like that cliche. When you get on the plane, what do they say? If the oxygen mask comes down, I know, but people don't realize what the definition, what that's, we use it as a metaphor, but why? Because if you don't look after yourself, I ain't good to anyone else. But I have to be true to me first. And I think that's where you're coming from. I feel that that's where you're coming from as well. So now what you do is you actually help others, you help other women on these journeys. You know, so where do you help them? Like, do they reach out to you just the beginning of their journey, midway through their journey, before their journey of this sort comes along? You know, because I feel like I'm at service, and I believe you are too. And I always say to people, please come and reach out to me before you get that knock on the door like I did. So, and that's what I mean by being at service. If I can help you before you come down this road, great. So yeah, so how do you do this within yourself? How do you help women and possibly traumas they're going through?
Mm. Oh, there's so much you've said, Grace, and that I really want to acknowledge just before I go there. I was nodding all the way through that, reminding me of, we used to have an advert in England for an insurance company. I don't know if you have it over there,
Mm,
Churchill, like
no,
this nodding
yeah,
dog, and I just feel like I'm this nodding dog at you.
yeah.
But yeah, resonating with so much that you're saying, you know, the
Mm,
oxygen mask, saying no to others means saying yes to yourself. You know, some of us have to learn all of that.
mhm, mhm,
And that's part of undoing these and releasing these identities and these personality structures. So yes, this is the work that I do with women. I mean, I really focus on women who either are on the breast cancer journey or they've come out the other side and they have
mm,
the all clear, but they're possibly still worried about it coming back. So
mhm,
they still
mhm,
have a fear that runs.
mm,
And, you know, as I've said, that running that fear and just letting it run without dealing with it, I believe is not healthy and can actually be a reason why the disease might come back, because really, in a way, it's never gone. You've never dealt with the root cause. So really, I work with women who are more interested in a holistic journey. So it's unlikely if they want to go the medical route, they're happy with that, they're aligned to that, that's all they're interested in. And for many women, that works really well, I believe, because they're totally aligned with it. As long as you're aligned with what you're doing, it's probably going to work for you. But for me, I work with the women who, yes, they may or may not want medical treatment, but they're interested in doing everything that they can. They want to get to the root cause. They know that there's certain things that have happened in their life that may have brought them to this point and manifested as a diagnosis of breast cancer. And they want to do everything that they can in order to be well, and everything they can in order to prevent it from coming back. I think, some of I want to mention at this point, actually, the work of this Dr. Hamer, this German doctor who founded something called German New Medicine. And I became aware of his work way back when I got diagnosed. But at that time, I didn't look really deeply into it. I read a few things about it. And the thing that really piqued my interest was that he was saying, for a right-handed woman, which I am, with a tumor in the left breast, which mine was, same for you.
Yep, and I'm right-handed.
Right. That that the root cause of the illness was to do with mother-child conflict.
There you go.
Which just blew me away, because I'm looking at, okay, my history of adoption, which I translated into my being as being rejected and not wanted and abandoned, and then being brought up, by parents who had the best of intentions. And like you were saying about your parents, they, I don't doubt that they loved me, but I didn't feel loved by them. And my mother who brought me up was quite abusive. She had her own issues. She was very controlling. She had a lot of anger. I was flipping terrified of her. So I lived in fear. So it made perfect sense to me. So I've always known throughout the journey, and actually prior to that there were these issues that I carried that needed resolving. But the other thing that as I delved more deeply into his work, I'm finding it endlessly fascinating. So he actually says that, and initially he worked and mapped cancers, because he was an oncologist and he was working with cancer patients, but he then went on to map other illnesses. And I find this incredibly fascinating. So he actually, Dr. Hamer, this is a German New Medicine, he actually developed cancer himself within about a year or two of his son being tragically killed.
Yeah.
And prior to that, he'd been a very healthy man. And he thought this isn't a coincidence. And he got really interested in it. And then he started to ask questions of his cancer patients. And he found, without a doubt, that within a year or two prior to a detectable cancer, they'd had some kind of major trauma or stress in their life. And then he started to look at the brains of his cancer patients. He was doing CT scans of his cancer patients, and he noticed that there was always an area of the brain that was damaged, if you like, and the area of the brain that was damaged related specifically to the organ or the system in the body in which the cancer was manifesting. So he pieced this incredible body of work together where he's mapped every sort of disease symptom to the area of the brain and what it relates to. And he's basically saying that there is a trigger for the illness, something that he calls, if I remember rightly, a shock conflict or a conflict trauma, that starts this stress phase of disease, and that disease has these two phases. And then if we can resolve that trauma, then we can start to move into the healing phase. Of course, we're not as simple as that, and often we can kind of recycle between these sort of stress and healing phases. So this is where I think we can actually heal from something, but then we can recreate it because our mind gets involved, it relives the original trauma, we get scared and worried about it, we start, oh no, what if it comes back, what if this, what if that? So we need to, this is where the work of really pulling out these emotional taproots, these emotional energetic taproots from the body mind system comes into play, so that we can start to move forward in a different way. Now, I just find that work absolutely fascinating. And this is really what bothers me about the medical system, is that they aren't, you know, there is such great information out there that isn't integrated into the medical model. However, there is a system of meta health, which has taken Dr. Hamer's work and is all about integrating the medical approach with the alternative and complementary approach, and also working with these emotional shock conflicts and undoing those. And for me, understanding this information has taken all the fear out of the disease. Because, as you probably know from your own journey, and many people do, everybody I speak to with a cancer diagnosis knows the fear. You know,
Absolutely.
this comes with fear, but which came first, the fear or the cancer?
The fear.
Cancer or the fear? It's like the chicken and the egg.
It's really the chicken. That's right. But I always say to people that I always thought that the fear, for myself, I always thought that the fear came with the cancer, but it wasn't. It was always underlining. The cancer just sifted it out, made it bigger. And like yourself, I lived in fear for 2 years, and it had me by the throat in a corner, and I couldn't breathe, to the point where I would say to people, I'm not going to die of cancer. I'm going to die of fear. And then, like yourself, I went through a process with my mentor where now, you know, the process itself was very big. When I say it, I'm not going to scream it out what I said, but part of the process was I looked at fear like a person, and I said, you need to pack your bags and you need to get the F out. I've got no time for you ever again. I don't want you to come and visit. I looked at it like it was a person who's come into my home and has destroyed my house. You're not going to say to that person, oh, could you do me a favor? Could you please leave? You're going to get, no, I've had enough of this. I'm not going to take it anymore. So I went through that process, but for me, it was because it cost me my life. It cost me 2 years of my life. I wouldn't even book this from the next day. I wouldn't book nothing. You know, oh, do you want to do that in a week? I don't know if I'm going to be here in a week. Why should I book it? That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So with that, I learned. And the moment now, like people laugh when I say it, but I go, mate, fear can't come visit me. You can come visit me if I'm on a plane and the pilot says, last prayers, we're going down. Okay, you can come. That's the only time. Do I get scared? Yes, but that's different. I don't live in it. I look at it. Okay, why are you coming up? Scanxiety is what they call every year someone goes for a scan. They call it, and I think, why name it? Right? Why name it? But anyway, you know what I mean? I'm like, a scanxiety. It's like, whatever. Why don't you just put another label on that? That's what puts fear into people. And I just want to touch on that because, like we're saying, it doesn't matter. I mean, in your case, it's holistic. I went holistic as well, but I did the holistic approach. And I always say to people, in my case, I had Western medicine here. I still did the blood test. I still did the scans. I still did everything. I still needed it. But if you don't fix the mind and the soul, it doesn't matter how many operations, how much chemo, how much radiation you do, it's not going to get better. I believe that because you have to basically get rid of that old blueprint. It's an old blueprint that we have. You have to get rid of it and start from scratch. And that's scary because, like you said before, people identify a certain way. Well, who am I now if I'm not going to be this people pleaser? Who am I now if I'm not going to be the yes girl? Who am I now if I suppress everything and everyone thinks I'm the most bubbly person out there? So there's that conflict of, oh, I need to stick with this persona, and that could hurt you. Now, the thing is also, the doctor giving you feedback, making you feel fearful. So this doctor, this doctor, it's a perfect example. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Christopher Reeve's wife. She passed away 4 months after he did. Why? She died of lung cancer. She didn't smoke. Lungs represent grief. So you can imagine a woman who, I have no idea how many years he lived in a wheelchair like that. I don't know. But whether it was for 1 year, 15 years, 25 years, she held that. That's why it took her so quick, because like we're saying, because it's a trauma that happens. And I can't wait to look up this doctor as well, because I believe the same thing. It's something that happens that triggers all the stress hormones, or the whatever you want to call it, and says, like, here I am. And there's a great book that's called Why Zebras Don't Have Ulcers, because they don't live in fear 24/7. Us humans do. So what we do is we recycle that trauma.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to touch on that, because I was writing it all down and I'm thinking, oh my God, makes sense so much. But that's exactly what I love about it, because I love the fact that you do that for women and you help them through that. Because let me ask this question, because sometimes when I ask women to open up that side, some of them are like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. Help me get rid of my cancer and tell me what you did, but I don't want to talk about anything. And it's like, I always say to people, when you can talk about something and it's a scar and an open wound, there's a difference. So I always say to people, when it's an open wound, you need to fix that, because every time you scrape it, it's going to come back and haunt you. This is what we're talking about, the trauma that keeps coming back. When it's a scar, you can talk about it till the cows come home, but there's no emotion attached to it.
Yeah.
So do you find that women who come and see you, do you find that they're hesitant to tell you about their traumas, or do you feel like, you know what, I just got to get this off my chest?
I don't really track the women who aren't willing to go there.
Yeah.
Women come to me who don't really understand the level of the impact that these traumas that they carry are having. They might not really get the depth to which these things are affecting them or running in their system, because our system intelligently kind of packages it up and hides it until we're ready to deal with it. And cancer can be, the right kind of trigger for that to start opening it up. But I think it's also because culturally, our Western culture doesn't want to go there. So many people don't understand that they carry trauma. So many people don't realize that actually they're stressed, or they think they thrive on stress. Actually, we don't really thrive on stress at all, in my opinion.
No.
We're designed, we have a nervous system that allows us to be in stress for a while, and then, like the zebra, we need to switch it off and calm down and go back to grazing. We run into problems when we can't go back to grazing. And of course, it's the aspect of our mind, our I forget the terminology now. Is it the cerebral cortex, the thinking mind? That we can get locked into loops of thinking that like, oh no, what if it comes back? Oh no, what if this happens? That just recreates the trauma. So, we can resolve things to a certain stage or state, but then our thinking, and which usually is driven by the emotional and energetic roots in our body, they're related, just sets it all off again. So Yeah, I really work with the women who they get at some level that there is an emotional component to this,
Yeah.
and they want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Because, like, for me, it was, I'm looking back and I'm realizing I did and still do all that amazing stuff, but without dealing with the fear and the trauma that was trapped in my system, none of it could work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also I didn't go into the fact that actually now I am having some treatment now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I felt with the metastatic diagnosis, I felt a little bit backed up against the wall. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
shit.
Mm-hmm.
Am I allowed to say
Mm-hmm.
shit?
Yeah, you can.
um,
Yep, absolutely.
shit. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
So for me, it just felt like when I tuned into it, okay, it's like this is gonna give me some time to deal with
Yeah.
what I know I need to deal with here. So
Mm.
it's the medical system is not all bad. There is some benefits to it. I still don't think I could do full-blown chemotherapy. I
Mm.
still don't. But also we never know until we're faced with the choices. We can never really know what our
Mhm,
decisions are
mhm,
going to be, because
mhm,
we're a different person. We're a different being in every moment of now. So we have to
mm.
always bring our full selves to that
Correct.
moment when it presents itself. And
Yeah.
if you're thinking ahead of time, well, if that happens, then I'm going to do this, then you're not alive to the moment. You are
Mhm.
living from your head. And usually there is some kind of identity or personality construct, like some kind of I think you called it a blueprint
Blueprint. Yeah, yeah.
at work
Mm,
that really isn't
mhm,
you. It's not your
mhm.
authenticity.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
that's what I believe, you need to change that. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so that's the work I do with women is I mean, I talk about, yes, we address the mental, emotional, energetic, and spiritual aspects of the journey. A lot
Mhm.
of what I do is around undoing these identities
Mm.
that have us believing things about ourselves that are not true. They're lies.
Yeah, yeah.
Whenever we're believing about ourselves that we're not good enough, that we
Mhm,
can't do something, whenever we're down on ourselves, all of
mhm,
that, it's so clear to me now, all of that is a lie, and yet it can
mm.
feel so true. When we are identified with that, it feels true.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
it's about learning to release that, but from a place of understanding what we are. When we understand what we are and how to, it's difficult to describe sometimes, but I think when we understand what we are and we have a clear reference point for that, it then becomes really easy, simple, I would say.
Yeah.
It becomes really simple, not necessarily
Yeah.
easy, to release
Yeah,
what isn't us, and
yeah.
to spot the lies that we tell ourselves about ourselves that
Correct.
we've bought
Mm.
into for so long.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, I always say that because people like yourself are needed. And the reason I say that is because, all right, I was blessed because I did my spiritual work, my when I say spiritual, it's not just spiritual in that sense, but I did a lot of work and I was able to go to Peru. I was able to sit with shamanic medicine work. So that was different. A lot of people think, oh, did that purge out your sickness? No, 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 no. That purged out my traumas. So, when I say purge, I'm not talking, physically vomiting all the time. I'm talking crying. I went and did also from there, I went to Ubud and did Ayurveda, which is if you've heard of it,
Yeah.
that too. A lot of people thinking, oh, you must have dropped all this weight. No, the difference was I remember coming out of the doctor and he said, you didn't lose that much weight, but he said, but your pulse, he said it's like 180. So what it was is I purged again. I would eat clean, but I would sit there in my room and I would diary and I would cry and I wouldn't judge. I would just release. I would be
Yeah.
releasing. Then I went and did Vipassana. I don't know if you've heard of that, which is silent meditation. So that was a lot of stuff coming up. as well. So I don't get me wrong, I didn't do it back to back to back. I think I would have been exhausted. I would have been just dead to the world. But I did that, and that's part of my healing process. I mean, I'm about to go overseas again, and hopefully I can get back to Peru. Why? Do you think I'm an onion? I still got things to peel off. So the thing is, and I say to people, and people might sit here going, well, I can't get to Peru, Grace. I can't get to Ubud. I can't get to Vipassana. That's okay, because there are people that are here to help you, like yourself. You're at service because what you offer is what you've done yourself. You know what I mean? And that's the purest intention. That is the purest intention where there's nothing behind it. I get no benefit out of it. I'm telling you because I want you to walk this life. You know, I say that to people. I don't get anything out of what I do because I want you to live. I want you to live the best life you have. That's what, if someone comes up to me 3 years, 5 years and says, Grace, I'm now living the life I've always lived. That to me, money can't put value on it because it's that moment, you know, and I think that's, you know, and I'm just healing that. Sorry, not healing. I said the word healing, but I'm just reading how you have that, you know, you have some great tools and resources, which I want you to share with our listeners and our viewers, because I don't want them to think, oh, well, that's my only way. The fact that you said you're going down Western medicine, great. Don't, I always say to people, it's not a decision is a great decision for now. If you believe within yourself, I need to do something else, the world's your limit. There's no limit. Go and do it. I always say to people, if you're doing chemo and you're strongly with chemo, do something holistic. Take hemp seed. I don't know, take CBD oil, whatever it is. You know, you can mix them. You know, when I say mix them, be mindful. You're not mixing chemical like medicine with another chemical medicine. What you're doing is, if one is creating some disturbance in your body, then use something that's helping you heal that. So I love the fact that you're still moving forward. You're saying, Grace, I've chosen this path, which is fantastic. It's fantastic. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, you should. No, it's great. But you're still doing the other side, the side that, you know, your doctors, our doctors, you know, unfortunately aren't educated enough, like this doctor in Germany, to say, hey, we're fixing the physical body, but we need to fix this part of the human as well. So tell us what our viewers and our listeners can expect when they reach out to you. What can you offer them? When I say offer, what is your service?
Yeah, thanks, Grace. So I have a number of ways to engage with me, and I'm developing things all the time because I really only launched at the end of last year. So I'm learning all the time from the women I'm interacting with, and you know, finding ways to offer things that I know are really helpful, or I'm learning are really helpful. So initially, there's a freebie on my website you can download called the 3 Minutes to Calm bundle that I've put together to really help women to relax their nervous system.
Mm.
And whether you think you need this or not, I would really encourage you to give it a go.
Absolutely. I
I
believe
work,
so.
yeah, I work a lot with nature mindfulness. So there's, I've utilized a nature mindfulness approach with this that I have found absolutely profound for me in my own journey. And it's something that I pretty much do daily because I love it.
Yeah.
I love the way it makes me feel, like just to have that peace and that calm and that connection to nature is absolute gold for me. So that's something for free. I would always encourage people to download that. Then I have a few different ways, depending at where you are on the journey. So I offer a diagnosis support call for somebody who's just been diagnosed and is freaking out. you know, when you first get a diagnosis, maybe you don't want to tell your family about it straight
Yeah.
away.
Mm.
Or maybe you have told them and the responses haven't been that helpful to you because they're trying to deal with their own stress and reactions around it. Sometimes you just need to speak to somebody who understands what it's like. So
Mhm.
that's something I offer, which is just
Great.
an hour of speaking to me, offloading. I will, you know, I'll share aspects of my own journey if there's things that are helpful in that respect, but really it's just a space I provide to listen and hold
Beautiful.
whatever needs to come out in that moment. I don't care if you melt down, you're full of snot,
Mm.
whatever. I can hold it.
That's right. Holding space.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
The other offering I have at the moment is something called Stop Stressing, Start Healing,
Beautiful.
which is a small package just to help women. And this could be women who've just been diagnosed, maybe they're on their journey. But it's really to deal with the overwhelm that can come from the journey, especially if you're somebody who wants to do everything you can to heal. You're interested in the holistic side of things, so you're probably researching a lot. You're probably trying to gather information, and that can be overwhelming,
Yeah.
you know, because there is
Mhm.
so much information out there. So I take you through a process of just literally, in a way, getting all of that down on paper in a way that is manageable and gets it out of your head, reduces the overwhelm. And then I start to help you tune in. So this is where you're starting to learn to read what's right for you from your own guidance. So then we literally narrow all of that down to 3 manageable steps, and we help you take the first one. And through
Beautiful.
that, you're also learning the process to keep taking yourself through this again and again and again. So you don't need to keep going into overwhelm, because it's, you know, it's not a helpful emotion to stay in.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. And the thing is, like I said, you are at service. You are at service. And I say that with such humbleness and gratitude, because you are there for others. You are there to be there, to assist, like you said, whether it's to hold space, whether it's to give them one word of encouragement, or whether to help them take the first step on their journey. And that is why I do these podcasts, because I want people to know that it doesn't matter if you're on your journey, you're at your end of your journey, the beginning of your journey, you're still going through it. There is always things that you can, there's always tools and resources. When I say tools and resources, it doesn't mean you have to go out and buy the 17th millionth book out there, but it's seeing it, it's feeling it. And when you can sit here, and like I said before, I can feel your authenticity. I can see how much this is, you're passionate about this. I really can. And this is why I would say to people, you need to go and see Natasha. You need to go and reach out to Natasha. And I have sent people out there in the past that have come to me. If I always say, if I don't have the answer, I will find someone who does. So then that's where I encourage people to, and this is why I do this, because I'm not the only one. My story is my story. What I did is one way, but it might resonate with you, may not resonate with you. And that's what I really wanted to touch on. But if I'm correct to say, did you say you're also an author? Is that correct?
Yeah, so part of my healing journey, just to touch on that as well, I also, the deeper work, then the deeper soul work with women then is around undoing these personality
Mm-hmm.
structures,
Mm-hmm.
identity structures, and I do sessions around that. But those are very
Beautiful.
much tailored to the individual, so we'd need to have a conversation. So yes, the author part isn't directly related to cancer, but kind of is related to my cancer journey.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the traumas from my history was around having my creativity devalued and cut off when it was so important to me. I mean, I'm an artist in my soul,
Beautiful. Yeah.
and I wasn't allowed to. I was prevented from pursuing that
Mm.
in my schooling years. And to me, that was a huge trauma. It was a massive wound.
Yeah.
And it was one of the things that in my early 30s, when my life kind of, the first time my life kind of collapsed, I really realized I needed to do some creative recovery.
Yeah.
Which I did, but it was an incredible, difficult journey, because all the trauma came forward as I started to move forward creatively. I would try and paint a picture, and I'd have a meltdown about it, and all this narrative about how shit I was and wasn't good enough and all that kind of stuff. But eventually I got through that and really learnt to, value my own creativity, enjoy exploring it. And then in 2016, I started painting. Do you know what mandalas are?
I love
Right?
mandalas. Oh my God, do I love mandalas.
Yeah.
I have them everywhere.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So I started painting these mandalas, and for some reason got really addicted to painting them on stones.
Oh, wow.
And they brought me so much joy. So I did loads of them, couldn't stop doing them, shared them on Etsy, got found by a publishing company who said, would you create a book for us, which I agreed to do, which was an amazing experience. So the
Beautiful.
book is
Mhm.
a how-to book, which you can get on Amazon.
Oh, how beautiful.
But it felt very much, it was part of my healing journey. It was a real rooting into my creativity in another way. And
Wow.
also, creativity is a big part of what I do with women in a way that's right for them. Not everybody's a painter or a drawer. But that getting into that creative space brings so much relaxation to the body and gets us
Absolutely.
away from our thinking mind that
Chitty chatter. Yeah.
creates so
Wow.
much havoc. So yeah.
Like you said before, I'm nodding because it's like, oh my God. If you're a Cancerian, I'm seriously going to just flip out.
I'm not.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say I'm a Cancerian, and you sound like me because I did the same. I started working with, which are all behind me. I started working. I make my own candles. I would deal
Oh,
with
lovely.
crystals.
Yeah.
I was a florist by trade as well for many years. But then I started working with bridezillas, so I stopped. But I love flowers. So you know what I mean? I've always had that creative side, and it is so important. And like you said, and I think I've got a podcast on it that I did where I say to people, find your creativity. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that you've got to be the best artist in the world, whether it's painting, whether it's dancing, whether it's drawing, whether it's floristry, whatever it is. Do it. Like I have my sister-in-law who battled cancer, stage 4 breast cancer, still with us. Amazing woman. She started doing angel wings with wax paper, burning the wax paper. So it
Wow.
makes like the black on the outside, and then she glues it on and makes these beautiful angel wings in frames. She would never have done that prior because, like we're saying, we suppress our creative side. And I think that is beautiful how you said that because it is important. And I love mandalas. I'm not an artist like you. I actually color in mandalas.
It really
So,
doesn't matter. And I mean,
yeah,
just colouring in gets you into a different part of the brain, doesn't it? It's so
absolutely. And I think,
therapeutic.
do I have a mandala here? No, it's not really a mandala here, but I've got them downstairs. I framed them. And people go, that's a beautiful picture. And I go, yeah, I know. Little did they know I sat there. Don't go too close. It's like Monet, you get too close and then it's a mess. But no, but I really, really appreciate. Did we touch on everything before we leave? Because I want to make sure that our listeners and our viewers get the best and the most out of you. So, is there anything else you wanted to discuss before we wrap this up?
I think I just want to point out, because we've touched on identity and personality and that a few times, and I just
Mm-hmm.
want to bring the listeners awareness to the fact that there is something called a cancer personality, and you can look that up
Oh, wow.
online. I think that's really useful information for people to have to see whether, are you running some of those patterns,
Mm.
and there's a great article. I can't remember where it is, but I can send you the link, Grace, and
Absolutely.
you can post it. Because
That'd be
it's very
awesome.
succinct. It takes an extract written by Dr. Douglas Brody, who highlighted cancer personality, and it gives you, I think, 6 or 7 things about what the cancer personality is. But then it also goes into what you need to address to resolve it.